The body in two places. Chapter 1, The Woman Who Saw Two Deaths. If you ever happen to stroll down West 35th Street on a weekday morning around 11, you'll learn two immutable facts about Nero Wolfe. 1. He does not like being interrupted during his orchid session. And 2. Interruptions insist on occurring anyway. I was at my desk in the office, doing the strenuous labor of organizing a file drawer with one finger and drinking a coffee that had already surrendered to the forces of decay, when the front bell rang. Fritz, in his quiet Swiss way, padded past and disappeared down the hall. A moment later his voice floated back. "Archie," he called, "someone to see Mr. Wolfe." "Does she look like trouble?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yes," he said. "But expensive trouble." That narrowed it down to actresses, heiresses, or wives of politicians trying to explain things awkwardly. I straightened my tie. Trouble is fine, but expensive trouble is worth combing your hair for. The door opened and in walked Veronica Vale, though at the time I didn't know her name, only her type. She was the kind of woman photographers develop blisters over. Tall, red hair pinned under a hat worth my month's salary, and a coat made from the sort of sable that dies only for wealthy sins. Her eyes scanned the room like she'd spent years on marquees and knew exactly how lighting ought to behave. "Mr. Wolfe?" she asked, even though she was looking at me. "No," I said. "But thank you. He's in the plant rooms upstairs. You'll have to excuse him, he's communing with orchids. I'm Archie Goodwin, his secretary, assistant, conscience, and the guy who gets yelled at if you track mud." She opened her mouth to respond, closed it, and tried again. I need help." That wasn't new. What was new was the tremor in her voice. Women who look like Veronica Vale usually don't tremble unless they're reading a bill from their jeweler. "Take a load off," I said, gesturing to the red leather chair. "I'll fetch Wolfe." "Must you interrupt him?" she asked nervously. "Lady, if I didn't interrupt him, he'd spend his whole life in the plant rooms and the agency would go bankrupt." I stood. "Give me 2 minutes." Upstairs, the orchid room smelled like paradise had hired a florist. Wolfe, standing in front of a long bench of odontoglossums, didn't bother turning when I entered. "Archie," he said, "you're early." "I know. Emergency." His shoulders stiffened. "Pfui. What sort?" "The kind with red hair, diamonds, and the posture of a woman about to faint gracefully into my arms." "That kind rarely has an emergency," Wolfe grumbled. "Only a performance. Then she's giving an Oscar-worthy one. She says she needs help." He growled like a disgruntled tiger. But he finished misting the orchids, set down the sprayer, and lumbered past me with the gait of a man who considered gravity an insult. Back in the office, Veronica was perched on the edge of her chair like it might bolt out from under her. When Wolfe entered, her eyes went wide. Most people react that way upon seeing him for the first time. He's impressive the way a glacier is impressive, and just as stubborn. "Nero Wolfe," he said, lowering himself into his chair with a sigh that suggested furniture was a personal affront. "You appear agitated. Tell me why." I don't know where to begin," she said. "The beginning is traditional," Wolfe said. "Though not always the most interesting. Sit back. Breathe. And speak." She inhaled shakily. "My name is Veronica Vale." Wolfe's eyebrows, not small objects, mind you, rose an inch. "The actress?" "Yes." She tugged off her gloves one finger at a time. "My ex-husband is Lionel Dane. Or was. I don't know anymore." She closed her eyes as if bracing for a blow. "Lionel Dane is dead, Mr. Wolfe." "I'm aware," Wolfe said. The morning papers were cluttered with it. Shot in a riverfront warehouse. A theatrical producer with debts and enemies. Fairly standard. "That's not why I'm here," she said. "Lionel Dane was killed in my apartment last night. That got my attention. Wolfe's eyes, which usually move about as fast as tectonic plates, slid toward me, then back to her. "Explain," he said. "He came to my penthouse around 9. We argued. He went into the library. I left him alone. When I came back 20 minutes later, he was on the carpet. Dead. Shot." She clasped her hands tightly. I panicked. I left the apartment. I didn't call the police. I whistled low. Wolfe frowned at me. "Continue." "This morning," she said in a whisper, "the newspaper said he was found dead in a warehouse. Identified. Confirmed. But I saw his body in my library. I touched him. I know what I saw." Wolfe's fingers steepled. "That's always a sign he's deciding whether humanity is worth tolerating for another hour. You saw Lionel Dane dead in your home," he said. "Yet he was also discovered dead elsewhere. A paradox." "Yes," she said. "You left the body where it lay?" "Yes." "Then we will confirm whether your library currently contains a corpse." Wolfe pointed a finger at me. "Archie. Fetch your coat. You will accompany Miss Vale to her apartment. Notify Inspector Kramer. Or O'Hara if Kramer's unavailable. Report back within the hour." "Sure," I said. "You're not coming." He closed his eyes. "Archie." "Right. Asking Wolfe to leave the brownstone during business hours is like asking the Statue of Liberty to jog to Brooklyn." I grabbed my hat. In the hall, Veronica hesitated. "Do you believe me?" "I believe," I said, opening the door for her, "that you're scared enough not to invent something this wild. And that's good enough for now. New York in late morning has a peculiar mood. Delivery trucks grumble, cabs honk in minor keys, and people hurry like the sidewalks are charged with electricity." Veronica's penthouse was a Park Avenue tower dripping with money. The doorman straightened when he saw her, then frowned. She hadn't been home. Upstairs, she unlocked the door with a shaking hand. "Let me go first," I said. The living room was immaculate, except for a glass on the coffee table that still smelled of bourbon. The library door was half shut. Veronica stopped 3 feet behind me as I pushed it open. The room was neat. Tidy. Peaceful. And very much corpse-free. But the bloodstain on the carpet told its own story. Dark, dried at the edges, fresh enough to matter. Veronica's breath caught. He was right there." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I believe you." I crouched, touching the stain. Blood. Human. The faint scent of gunpowder hung in the air like a lingering accusation. I straightened. "Miss Vale, someone moved that body." Before she could respond, a familiar growl echoed from the doorway. "What the hell are you doing here, Goodwin?" Inspector O'Hara marched in with 2 plainclothes in tow. He looked at the bloodstain and let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, glaring at Veronica. "Looks like our case just got company." Chapter 2, A Bloodstain Without a Body. O'Hara came in like a cop in a training film, jaw set, hat tilted, eyes already convinced somebody was lying and hoping it was me. "What the hell are you doing here, Goodwin?" he repeated, just in case the first one had missed. "Expanding my social circle," I said. "You know Miss Veronica Vale?" He gave her a look. "I know of Miss Vale. Didn't know she was auditioning for homicide." She stiffened. "I didn't ask to be in any of this, Inspector." "Yeah, that's what they all say." He jerked his chin at the bloodstain. "That his? Unless you've started hiring interior decorators with a very special sense of style," I said. He grunted and squatted by the stain. O'Hara's a big man, and watching him go down that far always made me nervous for his knees. He stuck a finger to the edge of the dark patch, then sniffed. "Fresh enough," he muttered. "Your story. Her story, I corrected. I'm just the stenographer. She'll tell it better. He stood and looked at Veronica. She looked back, chin up, hands clenched in her muff. Yes, she said. You were married to Lionel Dane, he said. Divorced 3 years. You saw today's papers. You knew he was dead before you called Goodwin and Wolfe. I came to Mr. Wolfe because I knew he was dead before the papers did, she said. He died here. Last night. In that room. O'Hara's jaw flexed. We pulled Lionel Dane off a warehouse floor on the west side at 11:08 p.m. Witness heard a shot, phoned it in. Patrol car was there in 6 minutes. No one saw him walking around your carpet first. He was here at 9 o'clock, Veronica said. Ask Fritz, the man who runs the building elevator. Ask my own Fritz, my butler. Ask the doorman. Lionel came here. We argued. He went into the library. She pointed at the stain. When I came back, he was there. Dead. The gun was on the floor. I didn't touch it. Of course you didn't, O'Hara said dryly. Then what? I panicked, she whispered. I poured a drink. I couldn't think. I left. I went to a hotel. Under another name. You leave him dead on your rug, then he gets up and crawls to a warehouse, O'Hara said. Lady, if that's your story in court, bring a good hat, you'll need something to hold the laughs off. I've been keeping my trap shut, which for me is a delicate and unnatural condition. I broke it. There's a simpler way to put it, Inspector. Somebody killed a man in here, bled him on that rug, then moved him. Either that, or Miss Vale is hallucinating in vivid color and you've got a bonus corpse somewhere. Shut up, Goodwin. He turned to his men. Get the lab boys. Photographs, scrapings, the whole bit. Nobody touches anything until they're done. I want this room dusted like a cupcake. One of the dicks, a skinny guy with a nose like a landlord's conscience, started unpacking camera gear. The other went for the phone. Where was your staff? O'Hara asked Veronica. My butler, Fritz, is off every Monday night from 9, she said. The maid leaves at 8. I was alone. Nice, he said. And the front door? Locked when I left. I always lock it. He jerked his head at me. Did it show signs of being forced? No, I said. Key or inside help? He thought about that, then went back into the library and began a slow, methodical tour. I tagged along. The place was book-lined and comfortable, with a big walnut desk, a liquor cabinet I envied, and a pair of deep leather chairs. A window on the far wall looked over Park Avenue. The stain on the carpet was just in front of the nearer chair, facing the desk. I kept my eyes open. Wolfe has a nasty habit of expecting me to notice things the police don't, and then calling me a half-wit if I don't. Something bothered me. Not about what was there, about what wasn't. I went to the liquor cabinet. Decanter, glasses, ice bucket. 3 heavy crystal tumblers. One of them had lipstick and the remnants of scotch. Another was clean and dry. The third was missing. Inspector, I said, you run a discount glassware business on the side? He came over. What? There are 3 coasters on the table, I said. One for each of those little rings in the wood. 2 glasses. 1 glass missing. I didn't take it, and Miss Vale doesn't strike me as the souvenir type. He grunted. Could have been taken off when she cleaned up last night. She said she didn't touch anything but a bottle, I reminded him. Veronica was still in the doorway, watching us like we might find Lionel folded into a bookcase. I poured drinks when Lionel came, she said. 1 for him, 1 for me. Later, when I found him on the floor, I poured another for myself. I drank it in the living room. I didn't carry anything out of the library. So we're one glass short, I said. Likely walked out of here with whoever walked out with the corpse. O'Hara didn't answer. He was crouched, squinting at the rug a foot from the stain. Get a light over here. Skinny Nose brought a portable lamp. Under the angle of the light, the fibers showed a darker smudge beyond the main pool of blood, a long, faint track. Footprint, I said. Somebody stepped in it and dragged a bit. Heel, maybe. Is that on the house, or do we pay extra? Watch it, Goodwin, O'Hara growled. He gestured. Photograph that. Get a measurement. I took my own look. The smear was narrow. The heel edge was sharp, not wide. A man's shoe, but not a big one. Could have been a woman's, if she favored practical over pretty. The angle suggested the owner had been close to the body and pivoted. The air over the stain had a second smell under the powder and iron, whiskey. Not scotch, something rougher. I bent to the liquor cabinet again. Miss Vale, I called, what does Lionel drink? Rye, she said immediately. Always rye. Never anything else. Your decanter is scotch, I told O'Hara. Good stuff, too. But I'm getting another brand from that rug. Something cheaper. Old Tavern, maybe. You boys find a bottle. They hadn't. The only bottle in sight was the scotch, sitting innocent and half full, and a French liqueur that had never committed a violent act in its life. So somebody brought their own party, I said. And took it when they left. O'Hara straightened. Save your brilliant remarks for your boss. As soon as the lab's done, we're getting that rug to the boys downstairs. Miss Vale, where did you go last night? She told him, hotel name, alias, time. He wrote it down without comment, but I could see a small twist at the corner of his mouth. A woman who runs from a corpse makes his life harder and his temper worse. When this hits the papers, he said, it's going to look bad. Your ex is found shot in a warehouse, then we find his blood on your rug. You see the problem? Yes, she said quietly. That's why I went to Mr. Wolfe. That fat orchid fancier isn't going to keep you out of this, O'Hara snapped. Then he sighed, like he knew what was coming out of his mouth and didn't like it. But since he's already in, he might as well stay. Goodwin, you can take her back to the brownstone. I'll phone Wolfe myself when the lab's done here. Very kind of you, I said. He'll be touched. Don't expect him to show it. Fritz had lunch on the table when we got back, sausages with mustard and a potato salad that could have made a dying man reconsider. Wolfe was already in his chair, a glass of beer in reach, napkin tucked, breathing like a man doing something sacred. You're late, he told me. We were communing with bloodstains, I said. Inspector O'Hara sends his love. Veronica sat opposite, looking like she might fall apart if she moved too fast. Fritz, sensing tragedy, produced coffee for her instead of wine. Wolfe regarded her. You understand, Miss Vale, that your position is precarious. Yes, she said. I also understand that if I'd called the police last night, they'd already have me at headquarters. I made a stupid choice. But I didn't kill Lionel. Declaring innocence is customary, Wolfe said. It is not, however, persuasive. Archie, report. I gave it to him, the stain, the missing body, O'Hara's timeline, the missing glass, the heel smear, the cheap whiskey smell. Wolfe listened with his eyes closed, chewing slowly. When I mentioned the 3 coasters and 2 glasses, his lips tightened briefly. A third glass, he said. A third drinker. Probably the guy who took Lionel for a walk, I said. Plus a bottle of bargain basement rye. Pfui. Don't embroider. A third drinker with unknown loyalties. That is enough. He turned to Veronica. Who, besides Mr. Dane, knew you would be home alone last night? She thought. Lionel, of course. My manager, Raleigh Kent, knew I wasn't booked. Victor Greer might, indirectly, he handles some of Lionel's business. I have a standing Monday dinner engagement I cancelled in the afternoon. And my maid knows my schedule better than I do. Any suitors? Wolfe asked. Persistent admirers. Men with a romantic interest. Her mouth twitched. Mr. Wolfe, I'm an actress in New York. If we include men with romantic interest, we'd need a ledger, not a list. If you mean serious, there are one or two. None I'd invite to watch my ex-husband die. He grunted. Sentimentality aside, your predicament suits someone very well. If the police determine the warehouse corpse is Lionel, your bloodstain becomes a curiosity, a scandal, and a cloud over your career. If they determine the warehouse corpse is not Lionel but a substitute, then your library becomes the authentic crime scene. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. What do you think, Mr. Wolfe? Was Lionel really in that warehouse? I think, Wolfe said, that I do not yet have facts. Only assertions. The newspapers assert one corpse is Lionel Dane. You assert you saw another. Inspector O'Hara asserts the laws of time and space. Assertions are not facts. He drained his beer and set the glass down. Archie. Yeah. Go to the morgue. Look at the body. Use your eyes, not the tags on its toes. Bring me something that is not an assertion. I stood. You're not going to like the smell. I am not going to the morgue, he said coldly. You are. I shall stay here and think. It is an undervalued occupation. Veronica looked up. You'll help me? If I can, Wolfe said. If you are telling the truth. If not, I will wash my hands of you. I do not like liars. They waste my time. She met his gaze, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. Staring into those brown eyes from that chair, you get the feeling the man can see your tax returns and childhood sins. I'm not lying, she said. We shall see, he replied. Archie, the morgue. And on your way, by the evening papers. The city will have had all afternoon to improve on the facts. They may, in their clumsy way, even help us. So I went out again into Midtown's afternoon churn, taxis, steam from grates, newspaper boys yelling about Lionel Dane's dramatic finale, on my way to stare at a body that was supposed to be a man who might already have died once on a Park Avenue or UG. It was shaping up to be a busy week. Chapter 3, A Corpse That Almost Fits. If you want to spend an afternoon surrounded by the aroma of disinfectant, cold steel, and the unmistakable perfume of mortality, the New York City morgue is your place. Me, I prefer a diner with a good grilled cheese and a waitress who calls me Han, but Wolfe wanted a fact, and facts have a nasty habit of hanging around morgues. I flagged a cab outside the brownstone and slid in. Midtown traffic was the usual demonstration of human impatience and mechanical resistance. The cabbie grunted when I gave the address. Someone die? He asked. Only my sense of humor, I told him. But we're working on a resurrection. He muttered something unprintable and merged into traffic like a man with a death wish. The morgue was its usual cheerful self, fluorescent lights that bleached you of sins and color in equal measure, tile floors that clicked under your shoes like a Morse code warning, and a clerk at the desk who had mastered the art of not caring. I flashed my license. He looked at me, looked at the card, and shrugged like he wasn't planning to save me if I fainted on the linoleum. You hear about Dane? He asked. That's the rumor. He jerked his thumb. Third drawer on the left. Emmy ain't in. Don't touch anything. I told him the same thing Wolfe always tells me, I rarely do. Lionel Dane, or the gentleman auditioning for the role, lay on the metal table like he was waiting for applause. Sheet pulled halfway down, arms stiff at his sides, eyes closed because death doesn't offer a lot of variety there. I took a good long look. I've seen corpses before, more than Wolfe would like, fewer than O'Hara thinks I deserve, but this one earned its contemplation. Same height as Lionel, about. The hair was combed back in a way that tried for Broadway flair and didn't quite get there. Jawline similar, nose maybe a touch narrower. But if I'd been a theater acquaintance glancing at a body under bad lights, yeah, I could be fooled. But I wasn't here to be fooled. I checked the hands. Smooth. Clean. No dirt under the nails. No calluses on the palms. And no scar on the right index finger, the one Wolfe had declared as real as gravity. "Hello, sweetheart," I murmured. "Where'd you leave your scar?" No answer. Corpses are notoriously rude conversationalists. The clothes were right, expensive tailoring, monogram on the shirt cuff. Shoes polished to a shine that said whoever dressed him wanted him to look like Lionel Dane, even if he wasn't. I leaned close. Something was off. Subtle, but off. A faint smell, men's cologne, cheap, the type Lionel would have sneered at. He was particular about scents. This one had a harsh, synthetic note that clung to the corpse like a bad decision. "Not your brand," I said. "And not your style." I pulled out my notebook. Wolfe had demanded facts, not impressions, but impressions often turn into facts if you look at them long enough. I sketched out height, build, facial differences, the missing scar, the cologne, the manicure, the shoes. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. O'Hara stood in the doorway, looking like a man whose lunch had been replaced with a subpoena. His coat was open, tie crooked, and the expression on his face was the same one he used for jaywalkers and newspaper columnists. "Goodwin," he said. "If I find out you're interfering with my corpse." "I'm admiring it," I corrected. "He's a very presentable fellow. Should I be sending flowers?" He came closer, ignoring me. "That's Dane." "Is it?" I said. He shot me a look. 4 people ID'd him. "You don't get votes." "Sure, they ID'd him," I said. "But maybe they weren't looking too hard. Busy folks, theater people. Lots of rehearsals. Little time to memorize scars." O'Hara frowned. "What scar?" "The one on his right index finger." He picked up the corpse's hand, turned it over. "Nothing," he said flatly. "Exactly." He studied me. "You're trying to say this isn't Lionel Dane?" "I'm trying not to say anything that gets me punched," I said. "But if you're asking my professional opinion." "I'm not." "He's close, but not perfect." "Close enough for me," O'Hara snapped. The dentist confirmed it. "So why does he smell like cheap cologne? Why no scar? Why are his hands softer than a bank teller's apology?" "Goodwin," he said, "I've got work to do. You want to run your mouth, do it somewhere else. Don't tempt me." He left in a swirl of annoyance. I lingered another 5 minutes, memorizing everything I could without touching the merchandise. If this wasn't Lionel, it was someone who had worn his clothes, maybe borrowed his life for a few hours, and then surrendered it violently. I closed the drawer and headed up to the street. Back outside, the city welcomed me with horns, exhaust fumes, and a newspaper boy yelling headlines like the world was ending. I bought an evening edition and read the latest on Dane's demise. The producer who died twice. Police deny woman's story. Reporters always did have subtlety issues. I ducked into a diner for a bite. Wolfe doesn't approve of food consumed outside his kitchen, but sometimes a man needs a grilled cheese and a coffee that isn't brewed with existential despair. I ate fast, thought faster, and worked out what I'd tell Wolfe. He wasn't going to like it. When I got back to the brownstone, I found Wolfe in his chair, a fresh bottle of beer nearby, his eyes half closed as if meditating on the mysteries of mankind or just digesting lunch. "You're late," he said. "I had a date with a corpse," I said. "You know how romantic I get." He opened his eyes. "Report." I gave him everything, the missing scar, the cologne, the soft hands, the nearly right but not quite face. Wolfe listened without blinking, his fingers forming a steeple so precise it could have passed building inspections. When I finished, he grunted. Satisfactory. That's high praise, I said. This corpse, Wolfe said, resembles Lionel Dane enough for casual acquaintances to accept him. A more discerning observer, such as yourself, notes inconsistencies. Therefore, the identification is unreliable. Which means the police may have a corpse that is not Dane. And Veronica saw one that was? Possibly, he said. Possibly not. But we now have two contradictions instead of one, and contradictions are useful. Wolfe reached for his beer. Did O'Hara trouble you? As much as usual. He thinks the dentist is the final word. He is a fool, Wolfe said. Dentists record teeth. Not men. Sometimes they record bills, I said. Wolfe ignored me. What do you conclude? That someone dressed a man like Lionel Dane, killed him, and parked him in a warehouse, I said. And either Lionel was dead before that, or he's somewhere very interesting. Wolfe lifted an eyebrow. Archie, for a man who speaks too much, you occasionally say something worth hearing. Very well. We continue. You will interview Victor Greer tomorrow morning. His office. 10 sharp. He will resist, but you must be firm. Firm, I repeated. Not fatal. Yes, Wolfe said. Do try to avoid being killed. That's always my plan, I said. People keep interfering with it. Wolfe shut his eyes again, signaling the conversation was over. But the mystery wasn't. Not by half. We had a bloodstain, a missing corpse, a fake corpse, a panicked actress, and a partner who smelled like motives. And Wolfe, damn him, was enjoying it. The scent of orchids drifted from upstairs as the sun went down and New York lit up for the night. Somewhere in the city, the truth was hiding its face. And I had the nasty feeling it wasn't done killing. Chapter 4, The Policy That Paid Twice. If Nero Wolfe ever writes his memoirs, and the chances are lower than my chances of winning a beauty contest, Chapter 1 will be about his orchids, Chapter 2 about his digestion, and Chapter 3 about why the outside world is an unbearable nuisance, especially before lunch. So when I told him, the next morning, that I was leaving to interview Victor Greer, Lionel Dane's business partner and amateur insurance bloodhound, he waved a hand as if brushing away a housefly. Return in time for lunch, he said. Fritz is preparing pheasant. I will not have you sully your palate with a diner. Wolfe, I said, you think my palate works for you? Your palate, he replied, reaching for the morning paper, works for no one. But you may as well use it properly. And that was that. I pocketed my notebook, dusted off my hat, and headed into Manhattan's mid-morning grit. Greer, the gentleman vulture. Victor Greer's office occupied the 10th floor of a sleek midtown building whose marble lobby suggested old money, while the elevator suggested new money willing to cut corners. I rode up in a cage made to rattle a man's bones into confession. When I knocked, a secretary with lacquered hair and the emotional range of a fire hydrant informed me that Mr. Greer was in a meeting. I informed her that I had time and a comfortable chair would be appreciated. She sniffed but delivered the goods. After 15 minutes of enjoying her glare and the scent of stale cigarette smoke, Greer stepped out of his office like a man emerging from an altar, polished, pressed, and ready to bless someone with condescension. Mr. Goodwin, he said, extending a hand as if expecting me to kiss it. I've heard of you. Sit, please. Thank you, I said. But I like standing. Keeps people honest. That earned me a flicker of disdain he tried to hide. The man had a face carved for disapproval. He gestured toward his office. Very well. Come in. The place was decorated in the expensive minimalist style, mahogany desk, understated art, a globe that probably never spun, and a liquor cart stocked with bottles that definitely did. Mr. Greer, I said, taking the chair without asking, you were Lionel Dane's partner. Yes. And the insurance company's investigator on the very policy covering his life. Yes, he repeated, slower. A coincidence of professional alignment. That's a phrase, I said. Mind if I borrow it for birthdays and funerals? He didn't answer. He sat behind the desk, folded his hands, and assumed the air of a man auditioning for the role of distinguished witness. What can I do for you, Mr. Goodwin? For starters, I said, you can tell me why you and Dane bought a $500,000 policy with double indemnity for violent death. He smiled thinly. Your reputation for bluntness is well-founded. Thank you, I said. I enjoy consistency. Greer leaned back. Dane was optimistic. He believed his next show would be his triumph. He wanted to secure the company, my company, with adequate protection. I agreed. And Miss Vale? I asked. That was Dane's decision. They were once married, and he had lingering affection. That what he called it? Greer's lips twitched. He was sentimental. Foolishly so. I told him it was unwise to involve her. He insisted. Generous man, I said. Especially with a policy someone else was likely paying the premiums for. He stiffened. Are you accusing me of something? Not yet, I said. I'm just a farm boy gathering eggs. Then gather carefully. His voice hardened. Lionel Dane is dead. His affairs are in disarray. I must ensure the company's interests are protected. Seems fair, I said. But funny thing, Dane might have died twice. He blinked. I beg your pardon. He's dead in a warehouse, that's for sure, I said. But someone bled on Miss Vale's rug around 9:30 the same night. Same height, same build, same favorite whiskey. Mighty coincidental. He stared at me for 5 seconds too long. A man who isn't surprised puts on a mask quickly. Greer was still reaching for his. Miss Vale is fragile, he said finally. She may have imagined. No, I said. I've seen the stain. Then she is withholding something, he said smoothly. Her relationship with Lionel was volatile. Volatile enough to kill him twice. He didn't appreciate that. Greer lifted a pen, set it down, and rose. Mr. Goodwin, if you intend to question my integrity. I interrupted, to find out why your company stands to gain $250,000 if Lionel dies violently. And why you stand to gain the other quarter. His jaw hardened. That is business. Sometimes murder is too, I said. For the first time, Greer's composure cracked. It was small, like a hairline fracture on a wineglass, but it was there. This conversation is over, he said. I stood. That's fine. I'll let Mr. Wolfe know. He enjoys unfinished conversations more than orchids. That got a reaction, fear, quick and well hidden. Good day, Mr. Goodwin, he said. Sure, I said. Good day. Good luck. Good alibis. A bite, a thought, a taxi ride. I left the building feeling like I'd shaken hands with a man whose fingers were coated in invisible ink spelling trouble. Wolfe was going to enjoy this like a fresh case of beer. There was time before lunch, so I ducked into a corner diner. The waitress called me handsome, which I took to mean she wanted a better tip. I didn't mind. I had coffee, a plate of eggs, and 15 minutes of thinking. Something about Greer's office smelled off. Not literally, the place smelled like lemon polish and ambition, but the timing of his answers, the way he hesitated exactly once, like a man stepping over a crack he knows is real. He knew something. And Wolfe was going to crawl inside his head with a crowbar. I paid, stepped outside, and flagged a taxi. Returned to the brownstone. Wolfe was in the dining room, fork in hand, demolishing a pheasant with the dignity of a Roman emperor. Fritz stood by like a priest at a ceremony. "You're late," Wolfe said. "Traffic," I said. "And a man who lies smoothly but not expertly." "Greer," Wolfe guessed. I sat. Fritz brought my plate. I didn't touch it until Wolfe gave the nod. A man must have priorities. "Report," he said, after swallowing. I gave him the whole Greer experience, office, attitude, policy, money, evasions, and the hairline crack when murder came up. Wolfe listened, chewing slowly, eyes narrowed in thought. When I finished, he wiped his mouth and said, "Greer is dangerous." "Because he hesitated once?" "Because he hesitated at all," Wolfe said. "A man of his type, precise, controlled, humorless, does not hesitate unless he sees a precipice." "Which precipice?" I asked. "That," Wolfe said, "is what we must determine." He pushed his plate slightly away and reached for his beer. "Archie," he said, "we now know 3 things." "Just 3?" I said. He ignored me. First, Lionel Dane had a motive to fake his own death, a large insurance payout shared with his partner. Second, a man resembling him is dead in the morgue. Third, Miss Vale saw a body in her library that she insists was Lionel. "And you believe her?" Wolfe snorted. "I believe that she believes it. As for the truth, I withhold judgment." "But Greer." "Greer," Wolfe said, "is the fulcrum. Either he is a victim of Dane's scheme or its architect." He leaned back. "We must find the missing body." "And the real Lionel?" Wolfe closed his eyes. "Yes. Whether alive or dead." That wasn't comforting. Evening in New York. By sunset, the city was glowing in its usual cocktail of lights, noise, and secrets. I sat at my desk finishing notes when the phone rang. Wolfe shouted from the other room, "Archie." I answered. It was O'Hara. His tone was sharp. "Goodwin, get down to homicide. We have a new development." "What kind?" I asked. "The kind Wolfe will hate. Which narrows it down to everything. Just get here." He hung up. I went to Wolfe. "O'Hara wants me." Wolfe glared. "Infernal man. Go. And return before midnight. I will not have you blundering alone." "Blundering is my charm," I said. "Pfui." I grabbed my coat and stepped into the night. Somewhere in the city, another piece of the puzzle had surfaced. And if I wasn't fast, dinner wouldn't be the only thing Wolfe was furious about. Chapter 5, Understudies, Doubles, and Dead Ends. If Inspector O'Hara ever calls you sounding polite, call an ambulance, because something in his vicinity has exploded. When he phoned asking for me to come right away, his tone landed somewhere between irritation and panic, which meant either he had found Lionel Dane's ghost tap dancing on a morgue slab or he'd discovered something that made our little 2 corpses tango even messier. I arrived at homicide to find him leaning over a desk, pounding a pencil so hard it was begging for early retirement. "Goodwin," he barked. "Sit." "I'll stand," I said. "I like to stay limber." "You'll sit," he repeated, "because I'm not shouting upward today." I sat. He shoved a file at me. "We've identified the warehouse body." "That seems like yesterday's news," I said. "You already said it was Dane." "Well, surprise," he snapped, "it isn't." I raised an eyebrow. "Tell me something I don't know." He glared. The dental records were wrong. Mix-up at the dentist's office. Half the files in the damn cabinet got shuffled. The ME double-checked after you started yelping about scars. And guess what? The corpse flossed differently. I suggested. "It isn't Lionel Dane," he growled. "The teeth belong to a man named Albert Rigo. Age 31. Occasional stage extra. Sometimes stand-in. Vanished 3 days ago." Well, well. A stand-in. The universe had just delivered Wolfe a nice juicy bone. You see my problem, Goodwin? O'Hara said. Somebody dressed Rigo like Dane, dumped him in a warehouse, and practically held up a sign saying look, it's Lionel. And 4 theater people swore it was him. People see what they want to see, I said. Especially when the police tell them what they're looking at. He groaned into his hands. Don't start with me. We're already redoing the paperwork. Did Rigo have enemies? I asked. Yeah, O'Hara said. 2 landlords, 3 bartenders, and a talent agent named Maxie Drum who wants his head back so he can chew him out with it. I stood. Where do I find Maxie? East 49th, O'Hara said. He runs a ratty talent agency out of a ratty office. If you're going, take a mask. The place smells like stale ambition. I tipped my hat. Thanks for the hospitality. Goodwin, he barked as I reached the door, tell Wolfe if he thinks he's going to run this case from a chair, he's... Oh, he knows, I said. He just doesn't care. Maxie Drum, supplier of talent and trouble. Maxie Drum's office was the kind of joint that made termites feel welcome. The sign outside read Drum Talent, though the word talent seemed optimistic. The waiting room contained 2 folding chairs, 1 dying plant, and a woman who looked like she'd been waiting there since Prohibition. I knocked on the inner door. A voice rasped, enter if you're selling hope. Otherwise turn around. I went in. Maxie Drum sat behind a desk piled with headshots and cigarette ash. He was wiry, nervous, and wore a suit that might have been stylish when vaudeville was still alive. Who the hell are you? He asked without looking up. Archie Goodwin. I'm investigating Albert Rigo. That got his attention. He dropped his cigarette, cursed, and stomped it out. Al Rigo, he said. Damn fool kid. Kid? I asked. 31 isn't exactly childhood. He had the brain of a child and the confidence of a drunk god, Maxie said. He thought he was going to be famous. Kept saying producers were going to discover him. Which producers? I asked. Any who'd listen, Maxie snorted. Which wasn't many. But one did. Lionel Dane. I leaned in. When? Couple weeks ago. Maxie scratched his chin. Rigo came in here buzzing like he'd swallowed a light bulb. Said Dane was paying him for something special. Wouldn't say what. Just that it was the role of a lifetime. Role, huh? I said. And where is Rigo now? You mean before he got shot? Maxie said dryly. Last I saw him, he was headed to a costume shop. Something about clothes that made him look the part. Which part? Maxie gave me a look. Goodwin, don't make me say it. The guy could have passed for Dane from across a dark room. Same jaw, same hair, same walk. It gave him ideas. Dangerous ones. I stood. You've been very helpful. Wait, he said, grabbing my sleeve. You find out who killed that kid, you tell me. I'll send flowers. Or spit. Depends who it is. Back to the brownstone. By the time I made it back to West 35th Street, the sky was fading to evening and the city lights were beginning their nightly gossip. The scent of Wolfe's orchids drifted down the stairs like royalty deigning to mingle with the common air. I found Wolfe in the office, reading a book on ancient Persian cuisine, because that's what a sane man does during a murder case. You are late, Wolfe said. I've been earning my keep, I said. And I've got news. He closed the book, marking the page with a ribbon. Proceed. I told him everything, O'Hara's dental discovery, Rigo's identity, Maxie Drum's story, the stand-in job, and the costume shop remark. Wolfe listened, expression as unreadable as marble. When I finished, he raised his brows. A stand-in. Yep, I said. Dane hired Rigo for something special. I can guess what. He held up a finger. We do not guess. We deduce. Fine, I said. Deduce, Rigo looked like Dane. He bought clothes like Dane. He was hired by Dane. And now he's dead like Dane. Wolfe grunted. A man who seeks to imitate another often becomes a danger, to himself or others. Sure, I said. But why kill the imitation? That, Wolfe said, depends on the original's intentions. He leaned back, folded his hands across his stomach, and shut his eyes. Albert Rigo was meant to be seen. That is certain. But who was meant to see him? And under what circumstances? Witnesses in the warehouse, I said. Enough to convince the police they'd found Dane. Exactly, Wolfe said. Therefore, someone wished to misdirect the investigation. Either to disguise the true location of Dane's death or to obscure the fact that he is not dead at all. Is that possible? I asked. Archie, Wolfe said, everything is possible. Human stupidity and greed are boundless. We must discover which variety we face. He opened his eyes. You will visit the costume shop tomorrow. That's fine, I said. But we've got another problem. Do we? He asked. Yes, I said. O'Hara is furious. He knows he chased the wrong corpse for 2 days. He's going to blame us. Pfui, Wolfe said. If Inspector O'Hara is distressed by his own incompetence, he may take up knitting. That image was worth storing. A knock at the door. At 8:30 that evening, just when I was considering whether Fritz might have a leftover treat in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Before I could move, Wolfe called out, Archie. I went. Opened the door. And there stood a man who looked like he'd been dragged through a worry mill. Thin, pale, black coat, hat pulled low. You Goodwin? He asked. That depends, I said. Are you serving papers or confessing to something? He swallowed. I need to speak to Nero Wolfe. It's about Lionel Dane. I narrowed my eyes. Who are you? He glanced over his shoulder like someone might be following. Raleigh Kent, he whispered. Miss Vale's manager. My stomach tightened. Manager. Assistant. Witness. Or suspect. Well, I said, come on in. Wolfe loves midnight surprises. Chapter 6, The Night of Two Murders. Raleigh Kent stood in the doorway looking like the last page of a tragedy, pale, crumpled, and in danger of folding entirely. His hat was crooked, his tie was losing the will to live, and his eyes darted around like he expected assassins behind Fritz's umbrella stand. Come in, I said. Wolfe is in a magnanimous mood tonight. He only yelled at me twice. Kent stepped inside, shaking raindrops onto the floor. Is he alone? If he's not, I said, the someone else is hiding under 300 pounds of detective. Relax. I led him into the office. Wolfe regarded him like a man appraising a melon he suspected was rotten. You are Miss Vale's manager, Wolfe said. If you've come to confirm her innocence, it is unnecessary. If you've come to muddy the matter, it is unwelcome. Kent gulped. I was beginning to think gulping was his primary form of communication. I'm here because I don't know what to do, he said. Veronica told me everything. The blood, the body. Lionel in her library, dead. She was hysterical. She has recovered sufficiently to hire me, Wolfe said dryly. Your purpose? Kent wrung his hands. She isn't lying, Mr. Wolfe. I know her. She loved Lionel once. But she never would have. Wolfe waved a hand. We are not adjudicating guilt. Facts, Mr. Kent, not testimonials. Kent swallowed hard. All right. Then this, Lionel contacted me 3 days ago. He said he needed to meet urgently. Something about a business arrangement with his partner, Victor Greer. Lionel seemed frightened. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Frightened of what? He wouldn't say. Only that if anything happened to him, Greer should be questioned. Well, I said. Greer just keeps getting prettier. Wolfe ignored me. What else, Mr. Kent? Kent hesitated. Lionel said he'd made a mistake. A big one. That he'd gotten involved with something he couldn't control. And that Veronica might be in danger because of it. That got Wolfe's attention. He leaned forward an inch, which in Wolfe-speak meant the world had shifted axis. When was this? Wolfe asked. The night before he died. I whistled softly. Some men send flowers. Lionel sends foreshadowing. Kent's voice dropped. You don't understand. Lionel said Greer had threatened him. He said that if Lionel backed out of this arrangement, Greer would ruin him, or worse. Wolfe pressed his fingertips together. Greer, again. Kent stood abruptly. Please, Mr. Wolfe. Help her. Help Veronica. I'm terrified Greer will come after her next. Wolfe sighed. Mr. Kent, murderers rarely attack twice unless compelled. But we will consider everything you've said. Kent bolted out like a man chased by regrets. When the door closed, Wolfe exhaled. He is overwrought. He's scared, I said. Maybe for a reason. Perhaps. Wolfe lifted his beer. But panic is not evidence. Then what do you call a man hiring a stand-in who winds up dead in his suit? A circumstance, Wolfe said. Not yet a solution. A visit to the costume shop. The next morning Wolfe sent me uptown to the costume shop Maxie Drum had mentioned. Wolfe himself was upstairs with the orchids, undoubtedly tormenting them with philosophical paradoxes. The costume shop, Levine's theatrical specialties, smelled of mothballs, grease paint, and broken dreams. A woman with steel-gray hair and sharper eyes appeared from behind a rack of capes. You the fella asking about Rigo, she said. Depends, I said. Are you serving subpoenas? She snorted. I don't serve anything except coffee and opinions. What do you want? Albert Rigo. He bought something here. Sure did. She pointed toward the back. Hung around last week like a kid at a candy store. Said he needed to look like a real producer. Bought a suit, hat, and overcoat. Cash or credit? I asked. Cash. New bills. She raised a brow. You think that boy had money? Ha. So who paid? That's your business, she said, but a tall man came in with him the first time. Expensive shoes. Cold eyes. Didn't talk much. Describe him. She shrugged. 40s. Hard mouth. Smelled like expensive soap and cheap trust. Looked like the type who steps on ants even when there's a path around M. Greer, I muttered. Say something. Never mind, I said. He buy anything? Nope. Just watched. Like he was measuring Rigo for a coffin. I left with that cheerful image rattling in my skull. A cab with bullet holes. It was dusk by the time I was heading back downtown. New York wears dusk like a threat, shadows stretching across sidewalks, steam rising from grates like it's got an opinion. I hailed a cab on 7th Avenue, gave the address, and sat back. We turned onto a side street when I noticed a black sedan behind us. Not unusual. Then it crept closer. Unusual. Friend of yours, the cabbie muttered. If they are, they owe me money, I said. The sedan sped up. Our cabbie swore, hit the gas, and we lurched forward. A moment later I heard it, the unmistakable crack of a gunshot. The rear window of our cab shattered like a cheap promise. "Hey," the cabbie yelled. "I don't get paid enough to drive." I barked. He did. Tires screeched, pedestrians jumped like popcorn kernels. The sedan kept pace. Another shot. This one punched a neat hole through the trunk of the cab. The cabbie screamed something that sounded like a prayer but might have been an insult. We shot down an alley, bounced over potholes, and skidded out onto 8th Avenue. The sedan overshot the corner, braked hard, and vanished into traffic. We slowed to a crawl. The cabbie panted like a marathon runner. "You some kinda crook?" "No," I said. "But apparently someone thinks I'm due for retirement." He glared at me through the shattered mirror. "You owe me for the window." "Send the bill to Nero Wolfe," I said. "He'll enjoy it more than I will." Back at the brownstone. I barged into the office. Wolfe looked up from his beer with a glare sharp enough to slice marble. "Confound it, Archie. You are late." "I've been shot at," I said. "Pfui." "So have I," he said. "Once." "You survived." "Barely." "Then report." I gave him everything: the costume shop, the mysterious tall man, Greer's twin in attitude if not identity, and the sedan with the itchy trigger finger. Wolfe listened, his eyes narrowing to slits. When I finished, he took a long, thoughtful draught of beer. "Someone," he said, "is dangerously anxious to impede our inquiry." "You noticed," I said. "You think Greer sent the welcoming committee?" "Possibly," Wolfe said. "But others may benefit from Rigo's death. Or Dane's." "You think Dane's alive?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that until we find Dane's body, his true body, we cannot assume anything." He leaned back, his fingers joining in that cathedral steeple gesture that usually meant a thunderbolt of logic was coming. "Archie," he said, "tonight we will not pursue leads. We will wait." "For what?" "For the murderer," Wolfe said calmly, "to make another mistake." Chapter 7, The Wolfe Trap, Hale Edition. There are 3 things Nero Wolfe hates. 1. Leaving the brownstone. 2. Being interrupted during meals, and 3. People who think they can outsmart him. But what he hates most, deep in the folds of that monumental brain, is wasted motion. Which is why, the morning after someone used me for target practice, he decided it was time to stop letting the suspects roam free and start herding them like sheep into his living room. "Archie," he announced at breakfast, "we have danced to their tune long enough. It is time to set our own tempo." "I'd have preferred a tango over bullets," I said. "But I'm easy." Wolfe ignored that. "Return every call today. Inform Miss Vale, Mr. Greer, Mr. Kent, the understudy, and the cab driver involved in your little adventure that they are to appear here at 8. And you'll be staying home, I assume?" I asked. "I always stay home," he said. "It affords me the luxury of thought." "And safety," I muttered. His eyes snapped open. "My safety is your job, Archie." "So is getting shot at," I said. "Funny how that works." "Pfui," he said. "Do as I say." A long afternoon's chores. Calling suspects is rarely fun. Calling people who don't want to be suspects is worse. But I did it. By 6 o'clock I'd wrangled them all: Veronica Vale, pale and trembling; Greer, icy and furious; Raleigh Kent, still anxious enough to sweat through a scarf; and a nervous cab driver named Marty who didn't know what he'd witnessed but knew he never wanted to witness anything again. Wolfe spent the afternoon massaging facts and beer with equal devotion. Occasionally he grunted, a sign his mental gears were grinding towards something big. By 7:30, the brownstone was ready for company. Wolfe sat in his yellow chair, the fireplace crackling, his bulk arranged like a king expecting tribute from unruly provinces. Fritz flitted in and out, setting up water glasses. "No wine," Wolfe insisted, and making sure no one stole the silver. The orchids upstairs sent down their faint perfume like royalty observing a ceremony. At precisely 8 o'clock, the first suspect arrived. The gathering of the nervous. Veronica Vale, dressed in black, entered first. She looked like a woman rehearsing a scene titled Tragedy in Silk. "Mr. Goodwin," she said with a tremor, "I feel ill." "Join the club," I said. "Dues are fear and anxiety, payable at the door." Next arrived Raleigh Kent, wringing his hat like it owed him money. He flinched when he saw Veronica, then moved to her side like a loyal hound. Then the cabbie, Marty, stumbled in. "I don't know why I'm here," he kept mumbling. "I saw nothing, I heard nothing, I didn't even like my customers." Finally, Victor Greer swept in, hat immaculate, shoulders stiff enough to pound nails. He surveyed the room like expecting applause. "This is absurd," he said. "I came only to avoid the unpleasantness of a subpoena." "Oh, it'll still be unpleasant," I said. "Just not for us." The understudy, Floyd Brimmer, a kid with the confidence of a wilted salad, showed up last. He kept glancing at Greer and then looking away fast. When they were all seated, Wolfe cleared his throat. Wolfe begins the oratorio. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wolfe said, "you are here because you are all connected, directly or indirectly, to Lionel Dane's demise. Whether you are innocent or guilty is presently uncertain, but we shall soon see." Veronica's chin quivered. Kent squeezed her hand. Greer smirked. Brimmer gulped. Marty prayed silently to the ceiling. Wolfe's gaze swept the room. "I have assembled you because this matter is no longer a question of identifying a corpse. It is a question of identifying intent." He gestured at me. "Archie, begin." My cue. I recited the sequence: Veronica's blood-stained rug, the missing body, the warehouse corpse revealed as Albert Rigo, the stand-in hired by Dane, the costume shop, the tall man who accompanied Rigo, the insurance policy, the double indemnity clause, and Greer's financial interest. Greer squirmed a little. Wolfe chuckled. "You admit bringing me here is outrageous," Greer said coldly. "I had nothing to do with Dane's lunacy." "On the contrary," Wolfe replied, "you had everything to do with it." Veronica gasped. Wolfe raised a calming hand. "I am making no accusation. I am observing that Mr. Greer was involved in Dane's finances, his policy, and his fears." Greer opened his mouth, but Wolfe talked over him. "Before we continue, Mr. Brimmer," Wolfe said, turning to the understudy, "have you anything to confess?" Brimmer's face turned white. "And no, sir. I didn't kill anybody." "I did not ask if you killed anyone," Wolfe said. "I asked if you had anything to confess." Brimmer swallowed. "All right. I helped Rigo. He paid me $20 to show him how Dane walked. I didn't know anything was wrong. I thought it was a gag." Greer glared at him like wishing murder was legal. Wolfe nodded. "Thank you, young man. That aligns with what we already deduced." "Deduce this." Greer snapped. Dane was mad. Unstable. Hallucinating threats. He vanished 2 nights before, off drinking or gambling. Then he turns up dead. I had no part in it. "Indeed?" Wolfe murmured. "Mr. Kent?" Kent jumped. "Why, yes. You told us Lionel Dane feared Mr. Greer." "Why?" "Lionel said Greer threatened him," Kent stammered. "Said if he didn't finish the arrangement, he'd regret it." "Greer?" Wolfe asked mildly. "That is a lie." Greer barked. The tension in the room thickened like Fritz's gravy. The timeline trap. Wolfe lifted a finger. "Before you exhaust your vocal cords, Mr. Greer, let us review where each of you was during the critical hours." He nodded at me. "Archie." I pulled out my notes. Miss Vale was alone on the roof when the murder in her apartment happened, assuming it did. Kent was at home. Brimmer was at a rehearsal. Marty the cabbie was working 34th Street. Greer, I looked up. Had no alibi. Greer stiffened. I was home. Alone? Wolfe asked. Yes, he said. Convenient, Wolfe murmured. You cannot imply. Implication is not accusation, Wolfe said. But I can imply that you had opportunity, motive, and proximity to Albert Rigo before his own timely demise. Rigo's name hung in the air like stale smoke. Furthermore, Wolfe continued, someone attempted to kill my assistant last night. A cowardly act intended not to eliminate him but to eliminate what he had learned. He pointed at the cabbie. Driver, described the sedan. Marty's voice trembled. Black, big, shiny. Looked like it came from money. Person inside was wearing a hat pulled low, but the coat. Expensive. Tailored. Could see the shoulders, broad. Well? Wolfe said, turning to Greer. Greer sputtered. This is outrageous. Outrage, Wolfe said, is the music of the guilty. Kent coughed. Veronica looked faint. Brimmer looked ready to bolt. Wolfe leaned back. I cannot yet pronounce guilt. But I can say this, the killer is in this room. That got all eyes wide. And, Wolfe continued, I have proof. But I will not unveil it tonight. Even I blinked at that. He was pulling the classic Wolfe maneuver, get them off balance, then wait for the dam to crack. You may all go, Wolfe said. But not far. Tomorrow morning, at 10 o'clock, I shall call Inspector O'Hara and deliver the murderer. Greer shot to his feet. This is a farce. You may think so, Wolfe said calmly. But Archie will escort you out. Which I did. Aftermath in the office. When the door closed behind the last suspect, I turned to Wolfe. You sure know how to light a fuse. Bah, Wolfe said. A fuse needs only be lit if connected to the right explosive. Meaning? Meaning the killer knows I know, Wolfe said. And that I shall call the police in the morning. I frowned. Which gives the killer all night to panic, Wolfe said, eyes gleaming. And panicked people make mistakes. He lifted his glass of beer. To tomorrow, he said. I didn't like it. But Wolfe, damn him, was enjoying himself. Chapter 8, One Man, One Murderer. By 8:30 the next morning Wolfe was already awake, which should tell you how serious things were. Usually, he rises at a pace that would embarrass glaciers. But when murder is in the air, and especially when the murderer is expected to panic, Wolfe becomes almost sprightly, in the way a cathedral might become sprightly if it leaned forward an inch. I'd barely finished my coffee when he rang the office bell. Archie, he called, come in here and bring your wits. I always do, I said, stepping inside. But I can fetch a spare set from the closet if needed. Wolfe sat squarely in his chair, looking smug enough to sell insurance policies of his own. It is time. For what? I asked. Breakfast? Confession? Capitalism reform? For O'Hara, he said. Call him. I did. The inspector answered on the second ring, already in full growl mode. What do you want, Goodwin? To make your day, I said. Wolfe has a present for you. If it's a stomachache, I already have one. It's a killer, I said. Come quick. A pause. Then, on my way. Don't let Wolfe flee the country. That'll be the day, I muttered, and hung up. O'Hara arrives, fireworks in tow. By 10 o'clock, O'Hara marched into the office with 2 detectives, enough tension in his shoulders to power a small city. Behind him came Veronica Vale, Raleigh Kent, Brimmer the understudy, Marty the cabbie, and finally Victor Greer, who looked like he'd rather eat glass than see Wolfe again. Wolfe didn't rise. He looked around the room with slow satisfaction, as if ensuring all the pieces of his little chessboard were present. "Good morning," he said. "Let us conclude this matter." O'Hara growled, "Get to it, Wolfe. I've had enough theatrics." "Then cease contributing to them," Wolfe replied, and gestured for everyone to sit. Greer didn't. "If this is another ridiculous implication—" "Sit," Wolfe said. And Greer, after hesitating just long enough for me to enjoy it, sat. Wolfe steepled his fingers. "The heart of this affair lies in a single fact: Lionel Dane died only once." Veronica gasped. Greer twitched. Kent almost fainted. O'Hara crossed his arms. Wolfe continued, "The confusion arose because someone arranged for a second corpse, Albert Rigo, to impersonate Dane in death. That corpse was discovered in a warehouse. The purpose, to create the illusion that Dane had been killed there, not in Miss Vale's penthouse." "Prove it," Greer snapped. "Oh, sit still," Wolfe said. "Every piece fits." Wolfe unravels the knot. "First," he said, "there is the bloodstain in Miss Vale's library. It contained cheap rye whiskey, Rigo's drink, not Dane's. And there were marks consistent with a body being dragged, not collapsed." Veronica flinched. "But, I saw." "You saw what someone wanted you to see," Wolfe said gently. "A man dressed as Lionel Dane, lying face down, still warm from having been killed moments earlier." O'Hara scowled. "Who says Dane didn't bleed there?" "Pfui," Wolfe said. "Dane was no drinker of cheap swill. And his height, his weight, the absence of a finger scar all match Rigo, not Dane." "Then where's Lionel's body?" Kent asked, pale as chalk. Wolfe turned to me. "Archie." I nodded. "The smell." Everyone stared at me. "The cologne on the warehouse corpse," I said. "Cheap. Artificial." Greer's taste ran to refined stuff. "Rigo, though, he used the same brand I smelled in Dane's penthouse, on the rug." "Meaning, Rigo died there. Not Dane." Wolfe nodded. "Exactly." "And Lionel?" Veronica whispered. Wolfe paused, letting the tension thicken. "Lionel Dane died shortly afterward," he said. "In your penthouse. But his body was removed long before police arrived." "Why would anyone take his body?" O'Hara demanded. "To prevent the police from discovering Dane's true cause of death," Wolfe said. "Because it wasn't a gunshot." Silence. Wolfe let it hang. Then. "Dane was strangled." Veronica gasped. Kent choked. Greer's jaw clenched. "Rigo was the only man shot," Wolfe said. "In the library. The killer then dressed Rigo in Dane's clothes, dragged him to the warehouse, staged the scene, and made sure the police would misidentify him as Dane." "And Lionel's body?" I asked. "Disposed of," Wolfe said simply. "Hidden. Perhaps dumped in the river. It matters little. What matters is who needed both deaths." Greer stood. "This is absurd." "Sit." Wolfe thundered. I actually jumped. Greer sat. Wolfe pointed a finger at him. "You, Mr. Greer, were the architect of Dane's insurance policy, $500,000 paid to you and Miss Vale upon Dane's violent death. But you were also the one person Dane feared. He told Kent as much." Greer sputtered. "Lies." "Hardly," Wolfe said. "You hired Rigo to impersonate Dane. You threatened Dane when he tried to back out of the scheme. And when Dane panicked and confessed to Miss Vale that he'd made a mistake, you silenced him. That's not." "You killed him," Wolfe said calmly. "And then you needed a corpse to present to the world as Lionel Dane. You used Rigo. You shot him in the library. You moved him. You staged it. You even attempted to eliminate Archie when he began to suspect. Greer stared at him, then at me, then at the floor. His hands trembled minutely. Veronica covered her mouth. Kent shook his head as if trying to wake from a nightmare. Finally Greer rose. "You can't prove any of this," he said, voice cracking. "On the contrary," Wolfe said. "We can." He nodded at me. I pulled the small object from my pocket, the missing whiskey glass from Veronica's library. Brimmer gasped. O'Hara blinked. Greer's face went dead white. "This," Wolfe said, "bears Rigo's fingerprints. Not Dane's. And your own, the glass you took with you when you fled the penthouse. A clumsy mistake, Mr. Greer." O'Hara lurched to his feet. "That's enough. Greer." "Save it," Greer whispered, raising a shaking hand. "I didn't mean to. It wasn't supposed to go that far." Wolfe nodded, satisfied. "They never mean to," he said. "Yet they do." O'Hara snapped cuffs on Greer with visible relish. "You're done, you snake." Greer didn't resist. He sagged like a puppet with cut strings. Aftermath. The suspects trickled out, Brimmer fleeing faster than he'd ever fled a stage queue, the cabbie crossing himself, Kent guiding Veronica gently toward a taxi. She paused and whispered to me, "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank Wolfe. He's allergic to injustice, and to incompetence." She managed a small smile and left. O'Hara stayed a moment longer. "Damn it, Goodwin," he grumbled. "Wolfe's impossible." "Sure," I said. "But accurate." He grunted and stomped out. Back to peace, and beer. When the office finally emptied, Wolfe let out a long, luxurious sigh. "That," he said, "was satisfactory." "Greer almost killed me," I reminded him. "He missed," Wolfe said. "Be grateful." "Some gratitude. You could at least give me a raise." "Pfui," he said, reaching for his beer. "Do not spoil a fine conclusion with insolence." I opened the window to let in a breeze. Outside, New York hummed with its usual mix of secrets and sirens. Inside, Wolfe drank his beer and closed his eyes, perfectly content. Another case solved. Another murderer caught. Another dance with danger safely behind us. And with that, the mystery of the body in two places finally found its rightful resting spot, inside Wolfe's very satisfied brain.